Welcome. Now, what can you say about Cliff Richard? No pop or rock and roll singer ever, except maybe Frank Sinatra, has had hit records in every decade since the 1950s. No singer or group, including the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, can match his record sales and his hits in Britain, except maybe Elvis. 35 years at the top, 100 million records or so, and still playing very good tennis. Would you please welcome back to Australia the legendary bachelor boy, Mr. Cliff Richard.
Thank you.
I thought after the cue that you might bring a tennis racket out.
Well, I mean, I was tempted. I mean, I play a better tennis racket than I do a guitar, actually.
So all those, I just rattle through there, your basically the biography, but how come? How come you?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Quite often I've been asked to kind of analyse things, and it's really difficult to be self-analytical and be honest, you know, because if I was actually analysing it, I'd say, well, I've done these things because I'm just truly talented and brilliant. But I guess... Well, one can't say that because I've known throughout my career other people who come along and they think, wow, this person's really a great singer, and then their records flop after a couple of years. So I don't know what it is, really. I just think a lot of good fortune and whatever it is, I don't really want to know what it is in case I start to try and capitalise on it and spoil it all.
But you mentioned you've seen them all come and go. There's something about almost like, you know, 35 years of life. I mean, you've seen the fads and the fashions and the styles and music and dress and so on come and go. They've all disappeared. And here...
Not all of them, but a lot of them have. But I think that's inevitable. I seem to remember that when I first got started, and I mean, I got started because of Elvis and because of Jerry Lee and the Buddy Hollys and the Everly Brothers. And people came and went then as well. I mean, there were lots of rockers that came, and they were called one-hit wonders in those days. I don't know what they call them now. Probably still one-hit wonders. But they came and they went really, really fast. So nothing's really changed. It's just that some of us had good fortune. Elton, the Rolling Stones, myself, and a couple of others have managed to somehow brave the storm and survive it. And coming back to your first question, I don't think any of us could really give a positive answer. We wouldn't know why it is that it's happened to us.
Would there have been a Cliff Richard without Elvis?
No. I can't see it because I wanted to sing when I was very young, but all the singers at the time were, well, they were, you know, Perry Como, Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Teresa Brewer, Rosemary Clooney. Really, I mean, I'm quoting here some of probably the best singers of their genre, and yet they didn't inspire me to be like them. It was when I first heard Elvis that I thought, oh, you know, the heart leapt, and I thought, oh, this is unbelievable sound. I've never heard anything like it. And
was there a song? Was there a moment?
Yes, it was Heartbreak Hotel, actually. I hadn't heard the first track he'd made, that, you know, That's All Right, Mama, That's All Right, that one that he apparently recorded in some little Sun studio for his mum. But I was actually walking where I was living at the time. There was a shop and a car parked outside, and the guy must have run in for a newspaper or something, and the window was down and the radio was on, and I heard, you know, what was it, Heartbreak Hotel. And it changed my life. I mean, before it even finished, that was the terrifying part. Before it had finished, the guy got in and drove off, so we didn't know who it was. So we all went back home, and during the next 2 or 3 nights, we were tuned into Radio Luxembourg was our way of getting stuff, and the American Forces Network coming from Germany. And we just plugged and listened until we finally heard this voice, and it said, Elvis Presley. And we thought, Elvis? What a funny name that is. But, of course, you get used to names. It's like the Beatles. When the Beatles first came out, I thought, I don't know whether I was ever quoted it, but I said it a number of times, this band can't make it with a name like that. It sounds like something you tread on. And of course, as soon as they made it, of course, the Beatles now is a perfectly valid name and has all sorts of magical connotations.
Well, confirm what I've read, we've all read so many times, that once you discovered there was this bloke called Elvis Presley, and once you'd seen a photo of him, that you're in front of the bathroom mirror.
Oh, yes.
The hair, the sneer.
You do this too well. You've done this, haven't you? Oh, yeah. He was such the prototype, really, for all of us. And as I say, thousands of us wanted to be like him. And certainly, when I was at school, all the guys that had any kind of hey looks, you know, we all went about quiffing the hair up and using Brylcreem. Did you have Brylcreem?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the stuff, and I used to hate it though, because after 3 or 4 combings of it, all this kind of gunge would be on the comb. But at least your hair stood up. And it was strange though, because the minute my career took off, Jack Good, who was a TV producer, said to me, "You look too much like Elvis, get rid of that image." And he made me cut my sideburns right down and I throw my guitar away. And he, in fact, I mean, I must admit, I'm glad I did what he told me, because it's painfully obvious now that none of us was ever going to be Elvis. Only the lookalikes now can be like Elvis, and that's permissible.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any other career. But people like myself needed to find ourselves. And when Jack told me to get rid of all of that, I was terrified. What am I going to do with my arms? He said, do that. So I did that for a couple of numbers, you know. And it worked. I found myself doing my own thing, and so I have a lot to thank him for.
Can you give us, because I know you did at the time, even without accompaniment, you and the mates, a little of Don't Be Cruel or Heartbreak Hotel, a la Elvis, as you did before?
Well, kind of, I suppose. It's Heartbreak Hotel. Let me see now. It was... Well, since my baby left me, found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel, where you'll be so lonely, baby. You'll be so lonely. You'll be so lonely you could die. Well, the bellhop's tears keep flowing. The desk clerk's dressed in black. They've been so long down Lonely Street and they'll never get back. No, no. They'll be so lonely, baby. They'll be so lonely. They'll be so lonely they could die.
And I noticed, in fact, that some of those clips that you got in the videotape, that from that, even after you got rid of the Elvis impersonation bit, there was still a bit of a sneer and a bit of a leer down the camera.
Oh, yeah. It's the only way we knew how to do it. Every time I had a photograph taken and my mouth was like that, I just loved it. I sometimes didn't know I was doing it, really, but it's because because he was the prototype, we all wanted to have, he actually gave us the look for rock stars. I still believe that no matter who they are, whether you be Axl Rose or whoever, the posing came from Elvis. All we did was take it and make it different a little bits, but in the end, it was he that gave us all the poses and the reason to pose, and that was part of it, that whole kind of lip thing.
I saw one of those, I mean, one of the headlines that came out in the British press about that stage. This is after you'd got rid of the sideburns and you'd been told to tone it down, but still the headlines are saying, "Is this boy too sexy for TV?"
Well, I was, of course. As I still am.
But it's a sign of the times, isn't it?
It certainly is a sign of the times, and of course at that stage the British public, not so much the public, perhaps the media more than the public, were desperate to have, we wanted an Elvis of our own, and I sort of fitted the bill because I'd done my homework and kind of could look a bit like Elvis now and then. Look at me, I don't really look like Elvis, but again, you just
certainly don't now.
No, you can just get that image going, and that would be it. No, thank heavens for that. What was your question?
The bad boy.
Oh, yeah. They wanted someone to be Elvis for them. And because Jack Good had already told me that I shouldn't be Elvis, I was moving in another direction. But nevertheless, I was the only one at that stage where I was doing concerts with my band, The Shadows, and people were screaming more than they were listening. And of course, that fitted the bill too, because every time we read stories about Elvis, he was to wiggle his hips, and the kids would all scream, and that's all we ever heard about what he did on stage. So I fitted the bill, and they used that. And of course, naturally, because Elvis was held up as some sort of sex symbol, I had to be the sex symbol. But there's nothing wrong with being a sex symbol. I mean, sexuality is part of our lives, whether we like it or not. I mean, more men go and see Olivia Newton-John, and probably more women come to see me. But that's because it's a natural force that plays in our lives. So I've never tried to be sexy, but you don't have to try. For me, Olivia has more sex than Madonna, and she doesn't take her clothes off. You know, I think there's a magic about women who don't have to do that, you know. So your imagination can run riot. And so sexuality to me is just being what you are. If you're a man, you will have a natural appeal to some people, and women also.
But the bad boy image was, we see the clips now on your tape and other times, we were black and white television, of course, then.
Yeah.
So, but you were fluoro socks, you were stovepipe trousers, you were...
Right, I always say that I was really the first of the bad taste dresses. I thought to myself, what can I do that Elvis doesn't do, you know? How can I look? And even then, it wasn't too removed, because I decided to wear black tight pants. I'd seen these pink and green fluorescent socks, so I got fluorescent pink socks, grey suede slip-on shoes. And then I went to this shop. This was before I actually made it. I just got my first contract, and I had a pink jacket made. with a black shirt and a pink tie. So I did look different, slightly different. I mean, bad, but different.
So you didn't do that, but clearly at this stage, if you were going to make it as a rock star, which you wanted to be, Harry Webb had to go.
And yes, I mean, I just felt the name Harry Webb didn't sum up magical. You know, there was Jerry Lee Lewis and Buddy Holly and Don and Phil Everly and Harry Webb. And it didn't ring true to me. So the very first, in fact, I remember changing the name. It was the first time I'd been offered a real professional job with quite a, well, not a lot of money, but it seemed a lot to us at the time.
How much?
It was £20. And up to that stage, we'd only been paid £5. So it was a 400% rise. And what we didn't realise, we had to get our fares to go all the way to the north of England, to Ripley and Derbyshire.
To get the 20 quid?
To play the gig and get my £20. And because we couldn't afford it, we actually slept in the hall on the boards that night. No sleeping bags or anything. We'd forgotten about things like that. But anyway, we went up there. The guy said, I want to have your name on the poster, Harry Webb and the Drifters. And I went, oh, no, it's just the Drifters. He said, no, I need the name. I want the name up front. So we quickly sat down, and to cut a long story short, what we did was we got some names, and I remember Russ Clifford. I thought, no, it doesn't sound right to me. It sounds like a ballad singer. Someone said, what about Cliff Russard? I thought, Cliff, rock and roll, the cliff face, rock, great. Russard doesn't sound good. Someone said Richards, and then Ian Samuel, the guy that wrote Move It, my first record, said, take the S off. It'll be a little tribute to Little Richard. And also, he said, people are bound to call you Cliff Richards in your interviews. You can correct them and say, no, no, it's Cliff Richard, and that means you get your name mentioned twice.
So that was it. You mentioned Move It. Move It went to #2 in Britain.
Yes.
Can you remind us of...
Yes, in fact, there are probably only 2 or 3 people in the world that can play this intro. Hank Marvin and me and my guitarist John Clark, and I taught John how to play it. I don't know why, it's fairly simple, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it. Faded.
Now, I know that there'll be people watching this who are too young to remember that, of course, many people, but was it a matter of, once this record was recorded, a matter of weeks, really, where you suddenly, the record's out, you got a contract, you're doing concerts, Cliff Mania begins? Was it as quick as that?
Yes, it's strange. I learned a lot of lessons really quickly. When I was releasing the record, in fact, the record was about to come out, I had done Oh Boy, the TV show. Marty Wilde was the star of the show, and I was the new boy being introduced onto Oh Boy. And when Marty went on stage, I don't know, was Marty big out here, Marty Wilde, was he known here, Billy Fury, people like that? Marty was screamed at like mad, and I came out, and I got a nice reaction, but nothing great. 2 weeks later, my record was in the charts, and I was screamed off the stage. And I thought, now, isn't that strange? Nothing's changed. I sang it the same way. I still went, come on, pretty baby. But they had decided that now I was acceptable as a rock star. It only took that 2-week period, and it went from there. But I suddenly thought, wait a minute, though, that's strange, isn't it? Because why didn't they scream it the minute they saw me? If I was that brilliant, why didn't they do it immediately? It's because machinery, and even the public, forgive me for saying this, sometimes need to be introduced to the idea that this is the person you scream at, this is the person that you all go and feel, oh, isn't this nice? And quite often that can happen. It's not a fault, but it's a fact.
Yes. That was every boy's, 18-year-old boy's fantasy, to have 50 girls or 500 girls screaming at it?
I'd spent my whole time at school the last couple of years hoping that girls would scream at me, but they never did at school. But so when I got out of school, and within a year and a half of coming out of school, I had all this happening to me. The Shadows and I were touring and seeing the world and coming here. We came here in 1961 after a couple of years. It was just fantastic.
Yeah. But when I was at school, no, when my big brother was at school, I remember at parties, at teenage parties, and the songs we would play would be anything that Buddy Holly did.
Yes.
And of course Elvis. But Please Don't Tease.
Well, we were very influenced by all of that, as I say, and quite often the simple chord formation of even Living Doll. I mean, we did things like, who's that walking down the street, picking up, and that could be, if you knew, Peggy Sue, you know, I mean, the chord sequences were very similar, and Please Don't Tease was, one minute.
Now, let's look at a love poem here. Did you really... Janice Berry. Who was Janice Berry?
Oh, well, Janice was my first serious girlfriend in school. We went out for quite a long time, actually.
And you wrote... How about this?
I mean, yes, I know I wrote this, but I can't remember writing it.
Now, if you feel bad as a teenager, here's this superstar who wrote to his first girlfriend, when teenagers love, they love forever. When teenagers love, it's bound to be true. I'm a teenager in love, a teenager in love, I'm a teenager in love with you.
Oh.
She had to melt on that, didn't she?
Well, I guess she did, yeah. I must have been 16 at the time. And of course, funny enough, teenage, that was all, I mean, music then was definitely teenage-orientated. Thank heavens we 54-year-olds can now still relate to rock and roll within a different age group. But I mean, it's
But she obviously kept that poem, because one of the books that was written about you...
yes. She told me, she rang me up that the guy, Steve Turner, who had written the book, had phoned her up and she said, oh dear, I don't know whether I should talk to him, you know. I mean, she's a happily married woman with 4 children and a really good relationship with her husband and everything. And quite often I feel sorry for my ex-girlfriends because they do tend to get dragged up quite often and it's unfair on them. But she's a really sweet woman now. And she phoned me and said, what do you think? I said, look, you don't tell lies, you know. Just talk to him. So whatever you tell him, it'll be all right by me. I don't mind. So I didn't realize that she'd kept that.
But you had...
It's kind of sweet, is that? What if the husband knows?
You had no Colonel Parker, you had no publicity agent, despite the fact there was this... But you were very much in control of your career, weren't you? The fact that you seemed to reach the stage of falling in love and then pulling back from these girls often saying it's going to interfere with the career.
Yeah, well, yes, I was in control of things to a certain... as much as we ever are. I mean, I was very ambitious, and I still am, and I guess when it comes to, when I think back to Janis, I think we'd both agree that my ambition was the one that killed that off. Mm-hmm. Because at that stage, and what you have to remember, it's hard to relate now. The new modern pop rock stars don't quite understand what it was like in those days. That the fans, and maybe there's some of you sitting here that would admit to it, and some that won't, that were not only there at that time, but were actually concerned that their pop singers not be married, or not have girlfriends, because we were placed in these, on these pedestals, and really every girl that we sang to was supposed to be the one. And I can remember coming out of the Finsbury Park Empire where we'd played, and I was currently going out with a girl then, and because the car was full, the shadows were in the back, I think 4 of them squashed in the back, Jean, this girl of mine, came and sat on my lap at the front. Well, I turned around, and I saw girls stamping my program into the gutter. Well, I mean, come on, you'd have done the same thing, wouldn't you? But it was really hurtful, and of course, and frightening too. And this is what I mean by ambitious. Now, shouldn't I have just said, to heck with it? You know, if I want to have a relationship, I should have... But no, in those days, it was terrifying that your career might fold because you were going out with somebody.
But there's someone, one of your advisors or close friends said, maybe it was the Sue Barker stage, but someone said to you at that point, well, if you get married, you'll probably lose 10% of your audience, but you've still got 90%.
It was an Australian manager, Peter Gormley, who said that to me. I don't know whether he remembers saying it, and it wasn't Sue Barker, it was another girl I was going out with. And it was the first time that I'd ever considered marriage. Of all the girlfriends I'd been out with, even with Janis, we were so young, it never crossed my mind, marriage at that stage, 16-year-olds. I don't think we got married that young in those days. But this was a girl who married Adam Faith, in fact. And that was the first time I'd contemplated marriage, and I was fearful of it again. We were on the cusp, though. Things were beginning to change for us. And I said to Peter, you know, what do you think? And I said, I don't know if he remembers, but he said, look, you might lose 10%. But isn't that worth it? I mean, what's 10%? You could still, your career would still survive on 90% of the people that follow you around. But the funny thing is, the minute I gave myself the green light, I didn't want to go that direction. So it's been a weird thing with me now. And so I've had a couple of false alarms, and each time it's been just that.
How many times, Cliff, do you have to say, I'm not gay, before people stop asking the question?
I don't think they'll ever stop asking it, will they? It just seems a weird thing, really, because... and now, I mean, I've got friends now who used to say things about other people, say they were gay, and I said, yeah, but the guy's married and got children. They said, oh, no, it's just a cover. So, I think, well, yeah, he's covered it 4 times, you know. And I think, it's ridiculous. So now...
The passion of love, of a real passionate love affair, have you missed that?
I don't think so, because I've felt it all before. And that's, you know, that's basically it. You know, I mean, I don't really feel I miss anything. In fact, I feel there's so much to being single that I feel that we, in fact, Ray, have the winning hand.
I do. I disagree, but there you go.
There's so much more to life than just that, the passion of the sexual aspect of a relationship. There's so much more to life that I'm free to do, because I'm free to go wherever I want to go for a start. That, to me, that opens up acres of freedom that married people should not expect. That's the thing, you see, and this is where I think I'm not married, because I really have a very sensible view of marriage. I feel that if I meet someone today, tomorrow, whenever, and I decide that marriage is for me, then I will actually give up my career to the extent that it is a career at the moment. I don't think I'd give it up entirely, there'd be no need to. But I would cut it back so that I could give priority to my wife, so that we could give priority to any child that ensued from that relationship.
Bachelor Boy, given what we've been talking about, was almost a signature tune. Was it a statement at the time or just another song? Was it
just another song? I never thought for 1 minute it was going to be prophetic. I mean, Bruce and I wrote it, and the funny thing is, Summer Holiday was being filmed at the time. We wrote it during the filming. They suddenly said, look, we feel at this point there's been a lull, not a lull, but the story's not, there's a song needed here. There's too much story and not enough song. And Bruce started writing something. We were actually staying at a hotel outside Athens. And we sat down together one night and wrote the song. And they all went, yeah, great, and we stuck it in. I mean, when you look at it in the film, it's just the bus pulls up in a little bit of sort of a grove, and we go into this silly song, apropos nothing. But as I say, it was just a fun song to do, and it really meant nothing.
Can you give us a little of it? It'd be close to your biggest selling single, would it?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's in the days when we used to sell 1 million of singles, and Bachelor Boy, because it got its gold disc, genuinely sold 1 million, as did Summer Holiday and Young Ones, Living Doll and stuff. If any of you know these words, come on, anybody know the chorus? Yeah. If you feel like joining in, feel free. What do I do? A couple of verses, a couple of choruses. So
that's the 1995 version. We've got a version as well that was a little early with some wonderful choreography. Have a look at this one. This is lovely stuff.
Honestly,
I want to see that version.
Oh, Michael Jackson.
All right, so we look at 35 years now as part of what this tour has been about. Do you, when you look at the tape and look at Cliff Richard over those years, I mean, do you see, is it like looking at someone else? You've gone through all the trends and music and hair and fashions.
I have to say, it really does, particularly with the Hit List video. I mean, when they said they're going to put together footage that even I had never seen before, because it had just been transmitted and gone out, we didn't even know it was on video. Because in those days, nobody had videos, but fortunately for us, they were clips that were filmed. And I thought, well, I've got to see this first. And I said to them, I'll tell you what, I'll do the introduction to them. I'll look at them and then I'll introduce them. So I was able to say what I really felt. And in a way, it was a way of trying to excuse how bad I was. I actually was able to have the freedom to say, look, you know, you've got to remember when you watch this next clip that I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't want to be like Elvis, but I didn't know who I did want to be like. And so this kind of void, and I see this apparition up there who didn't look bad. I thought to myself, oh, you know, I'd like to go back a few years and get some of those, you know, looks and things again. But, so I thought, yeah, look, I looked all right, but there was nothing there. There seemed to be no...
Looked all right, did you, Cliff? Have a look at the... have a look at the Eurovision clip. Now, the bad news is you didn't win.
No, I didn't. We should have won, of course, but we didn't. We got lost. We lost by 1 point. We only needed one country, Ireland or Yugoslavia, to give us 1 point each, and we'd have won. But I have no hard feelings. There was a girl who won it. I went straight up to her after the show and shook her warmly by the throat.
Well, we just saw them off to one side, but they were wonderful backup singers, those three girls.
They were just about to go to bed. Well, I mean, it's funny, you know, you mentioned earlier about watching fashions come and go, and it was strange because that was the fashionable look. And in a way, it was a kind of throwback. The jabot was going back, you know, I've just been to see Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
And, you know, that look, I still quite like that look. You know, from the waist upwards, it works.
The Beatles, you met the Beatles. In fact, there's this wonderful encounter with you and the Shadows in the Beatles in a kitchen.
Yeah, we used to, when they first started, we knew them a bit because they'd hardly got going. They'd had Please Please Me, I think. And Bruce Welch had a party at his house, and when I got there, he'd said, I've invited the new band, the Beatles, up, because they're all EMI and everything, so we got to meet them and talk with them. And I remember we sat about in the kitchen. It was quite amazing. They'd had Please Please Me, and what was the first? Love Me Do. Mm-hmm. And they had this new single coming out, and they said, we don't know whether it's going to be a hit, you know. And I think if my memory serves me right, they stood in the kitchen and they sang, na 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 na. If there's anything that you want, woo. And we all went, we think it's going to be a hit. I mean, it made us feel ridiculous because we weren't into that. We were sort of changing our image at that stage and we were getting into bow ties and tuxedos and singing different kinds of songs. And I remember listening with a certain amount of envy, thinking, oh, isn't it nice? They're only just getting started and they're back into sort of the kind of rocky stuff. Although that's not really outright rock and roll, but it was great pop rock music.
Would you have thought at that stage that they and the Rolling Stones, sort of beyond them, were going to be hits? Would you think that was too...
I thought the Beatles, the Rolling Stones left me a little bit cooler. I mean, I liked them, but I wasn't as crazy about them. Again, because I think the Beatles wrote very melodic music, and, music is incredibly subjective. I mean, I happen to like melodic rock and roll, whereas the Rolling Stones went more into the blues area, where the melody perhaps wasn't as important as the feel, and, I still like guitars that go, woke up this morning, but there's not much melody to it. And I quite like the feel of all of that, but the Stones did that kind of thing, and the Beatles did melodic pop rock music, which I related to much more. And they kind of left me behind, though, the Beatles, because while I was still playing Rubber Soul and Revolver, these, classic pop rock albums, they were getting heavily into all sorts of other things and coming out with all weird and wonderful stuff, more weird than wonderful as far as I was concerned, but still raising their profile quite a bit.
And did you actually publicly criticise John Lennon and the rest of the Beatles about going with the Maharishi? Was that about the same time?
I didn't criticise them. I just thought that the drug scene that was coming in, and I will say this for the Beatles, they were very open about it. They didn't try and hide anything away. They said, we're trying this, we're trying that, we're going to go to the Maharishi, the cave. And I loved it when Ringo came back. He said, it was interesting, he said, first time I've been to a cave with wall-to-wall carpets. So I thought they were really honest about it all. But, I've always felt, and I still feel, and it's not a condemnation of anybody else, people must have the freedom to do what they want. But I also have the freedom to say what I feel, and I feel that quite often we're not aware that, we ought to be made aware that there are many people who died because of the alleged drug revolution. Many young people who followed pop stars because their stars took drugs, they took drugs, and some of them didn't make 20 because of overdosing, dying too early in life. And I felt that as an adult, certainly now, I think we've got a responsibility, surely. Anybody that makes it to any degree must see themselves in a privileged position. We are elevated out of our poverty, out of everything, really, even out of relationships that don't work. We're freed of so many things, and that I think it's about time that rock and roll really grew up. And when Bob Geldof did the Live Aid, I thought, wow, it seems to me now rock and roll's growing up. It's recognizing other people's needs, and they did it. And then after that, it all died back again, and I thought, well, this is a shame, really.
115 singles up to now. Is it a stupid question to say, do you have a favourite?
No, it's not a stupid question, but it's a difficult answer to give, because as the years go by, I talk about this at night. With every year that goes by, I get given really good songs to sing, so the pile is getting longer. I mean, how can I choose between Miss Unites, or We Don't Talk Anymore, or Devil Woman, or Carrie, or Some People? I mean, they're really fantastic songs. But if I was really pushed, and at night on my shows I do push myself, I do choose Devil Woman.
All right, on that now, listen, do you want to dance?
Thank you, Chris. Okay. You gonna join in?
Yeah.